Hey, Clemson family, it was good to see a big win over Charleston Southern, and a lot of the bench emptied onto the field, got some experience. Also was not good that there were some critical mistakes, really had people wondering if the starting quarterback belonged on the bench for a short spell at least.
I'm Daniel Shirley, including Daniel Shirley, who wondered if he should be on the field at that point, especially after the pick six. And we'll talk a lot about that after what we saw Saturday against Charleston Southern.
Yep, I'll admit I was one of them too. I'm Bill Zimmerman. Welcome to the Reign Supreme Alway podcast. This is season 2. We are glad you are with us. We are glad that you can at least see us in some way, shape, or form now. Obviously, not fancy studios for Reign Supreme Alway podcast or ClemsonKickoff.com, our homepage, but we are growing little by little as time goes by. We are on social media. I think you probably saw us on Twitter a good bit Saturday at Clemson Kickoff. If you didn't, go see our real-time reactions to the game. You can also find us on Instagram, Threads, Facebook. We're not as active there, but you can keep up with us there. And we're on the major podcast services, but we are primarily on youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. You can catch our playlist that contains all our episodes right there. Find out where we were right ahead of things happening and where we were wrong ahead of things happening. And let's get into some of that, because I did not believe that Clemson would struggle in the first quarter against a FCS opponent, probably a low-level FCS opponent at that in Charleston Southern, brand new head coach, not a good team last year. I saw a lot of energy out of Charleston Southern, to be quite honest. I saw a team that really wanted to take advantage of every opportunity they had. And Clemson had its silver platter neatly polished to hand up some opportunities.
Well, the mistakes or what we're going to go to. I mean, the fumble that leads to Charleston Southern getting the ball on the 1 yard line, the pick six, which leads to directly 6 points, the onside kick, falling asleep on the onside kick. Those three jump out at you of a team where you go, is this team well coached? And we talked about that after the Duke game. That is this team well coached? That specific topic was believe me, you know what I've said about that on text, and we've said it on the podcast as well. The Duke team, that game did not look well coached. And the first quarter and a half of this game Saturday, this team did not look well coached. I mean, just unprepared, sloppy, mistake filled, however you want to put it. That's what this team looked like Saturday. Now, we have to say, after halftime, whatever was said to them at halftime seemed to work, and they played better. And, Dabo Swinney made this point, I think it was after the game, and then Monday night on his radio show, that even as they brought guys in, they continued to still look good. So the second team played well. The third team played well. The Hamp Green catch, my goodness, is the number one play on SportsCenter top 10. So that, you take the bad with the good. If we talk about the bad, and there was plenty of bad, I think at least after halftime, they looked like a team that you should look like against a lower level FCS team. And even crazy Daniel texting you on Saturday during the game can admit that, but you still, Bill, I think still the biggest takeaway is, for me, and I texted you before the game, that we're not going to learn anything about this team today in this game. And then they still make the mistakes that they made against Duke. And that is really, really troubling going forward.
Yeah, and that kind of was what I learned. Unfortunately, it was not a pleasant lesson. It was that this team still doesn't have a grasp on the fundamentals, and that should have been handled long ago. Cade Klubnik has been around the program long enough. Yes, he's only had 4 full games, 3 of them starts. One was an early substitution, controlled most of the game. Yep. He also had the game where he rescued the Syracuse game. So he's got experience. He's been around for camps. He was an early enrollee freshman. This is his second year in the program. You got to know by now. stop scrambling backward. And when you start scrambling backward, and when your body is on a 45-degree plane to the ground rather than completely upright, don't throw the ball into the middle of the field, eat the sack. Those are the things that are bothering me.
Yep.
If there's a bad snap, or if the ball is coming and you're not ready for it, prioritize getting the football. If you're going to have a busted play, have a busted play with the ball, not a busted play where the ball is on the ground. I mean, these are the things that Klubnik has to walk before he can run. And we have seen how talented he is against North Carolina. How many times have we said it? It's sadly becoming a necessary thing to say every week to remind ourselves why this guy's the starter, and far and away the starter, and why he wasn't benched against Charleston Southern after some inexcusable fundamental mistakes of not protecting the football and not making sure that Clemson had possession and maintained a drive, or at least had a chance to punt in certain instances. It's just got to change. And when is the switch going to flip for a guy like that, so we can always see him at his best? He moves the ball well. He's got great energy. Teammates obviously support him. There's a big gap between 1 and 2 right now. I mean, Hunter Helms, very heady quarterback, 5 for 5 when he did come in against Charleston Southern, capable in a pinch, better than Will Spires as far as backup quarterbacks go. I mean, I kind of, we're not big on player comps, but I kind of think of him as Nick Schuessler back when he was the primary number 2. And I kind of wanted the better energy and the better athleticism of Kelly Bryant to be the number 2, but Schuessler just kind of couldn't be denied that spot, right? Paul Tyson hasn't come in to make that difference, and I'm not sure that he's even there truly to be more than an emergency guy. And they want to develop Christopher Vizina, and frankly, a lot of what we're seeing about why they need to develop him is the mistake-prone nature of Cade Klubnik that we're seeing, that even though he was at a big high school in Austin, Texas, Westlake, and facing high-level high school competition, big difference when you get to a Power 5 program, even playing teams like Duke, like a Tennessee finished the season fairly strong last year, but was not a world beater by any means. And now you're seeing problems against Charleston Southern for that matter. And so he's got to find a way to just sort of take a deep breath, do some box breathing, do whatever it is to gather himself and be the guy who won't make those mistakes. Because I think if he's just protecting the football and making sure that he's staying on program, if you will, that the mood around this Clemson program from the fan base is very, very different at this point in time, if even only that happens.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, they have 5 turnovers in 2 games. 4 of them are on him.
Yeah.
They are absolutely on him. And, I guess you could say the ball to Shipley in the Duke game is on Shipley, but it was, Shipley's barely has turned around and the ball's right on top of him.
Right.
So it's everything looks jittery. Everything looks like too fast. Just take a breath. Right. And nothing is more important than the ball. And I talk about this, or the way I feel about this in all sports is, well, let's just say, the football and basketball. Turnovers and sloppiness can be fixed, and it's coaching. And are you coaching the importance of the ball? And if you're coaching the importance of the ball and that specific player is still not getting it, then at some point he's got to go sit, or she, whatever sport you're talking about. And then somebody else has to play, because nothing is more important than the ball. And Dabo Swinney said this Monday night that the ball is the thing, or Sunday night he has the Sunday night news conference and then the Monday night radio shows, one of those two. Nothing's more important than the ball. The ball's the ball. And you have to take care of the ball. And if you're, especially that position, right? I mean, if you're a point guard in basketball and you have more turnovers than assists, you're coming and sitting next to me. You're just not playing. And if you're the quarterback in football and you make the mistakes that he's made, you've got to sit. Now, if you correct them, it's up and down the field. Up and down the field. I saw the stat. I think it was Qualkenbush from WCCP tweeted out. They've got 2 3-and-outs in 2 games. That's strong. I mean, they didn't punt the second half of the Duke game and didn't score. I mean, let that sink in. That's almost impossible to do. Now, Dabo had called it kind of fluky the first game. I don't like that word because if you do it 5 times in 2 games, it's not a fluke. It's a trend.
Let's look at last year too. It happened last year.
Right. And so in 2 years, for the 2 years, 2 years and 2 games, they've done this. They've turned the ball over. They've been careless with the ball. That's not a fluke. But if you can clean it up, the potential is there for this offense. Now, we don't want to be all negative.
No, and look, I feel like the last episode was too negative too. Right. So we'll get into the pluses in a minute here. But yeah, continue.
I do want to say that I saw some good stuff Saturday. I thought the defense played like a defense should play against an FCS team and an option team. This iteration of the Clemson defense since Dabo took over and since Kevin Steele left and Brent Venables came in, and now Wes, they have played well against the option. They don't get their eyes too big. They don't lose control, all that stuff. And they did it again Saturday. It's sad. I didn't think the defense played well against Duke at times, didn't tackle well. They tackled well Saturday. They were in position Saturday. And, if the defense can play the way it's played the first game and a half and clean up that tackling, maybe they've got something there. And I have been hard on this defensive staff because of sloppiness and that kind of stuff. But there was none of that Saturday. Even there were no busts. There's nobody out of position. I mean, there's a couple of plays, but the other team's going to make a play.
Right.
But you give up 17 points, and they're all on 14 of them are directly because of the offense.
Yeah.
If you for everything I said about the Duke game, they gave up 13 points midway through the fourth quarter. And then the offense, and you said it, and I didn't want to see it. The offense didn't help. And then the defense wore down. But I thought the defense played well. I think Parker played really, really well. I'm really impressed by him. I thought the linebackers played well, much better than they did the first game. I thought the secondary was where it's supposed to be, and now they're not going to throw it much, but the secondary was solid. And then I thought the offensive line. Bill, I'm really impressed by the offensive line. Because we've had 2 years, Clemson's had 2 years of not good offensive line play. And it feels like the offensive line is much improved this year.
I hope so, because that can look. The Swinney talked about the erasers that Travis Etienne, that Trevor Lawrence, that some of the T. Higgins, Justin Ross receivers were when Clemson was at its peak a few years ago. There it is. I just said it, I guess. Numbers don't lie, I suppose. I think that maybe the offensive line has to be these erasers, right? Like maybe. They've got to start opening up throwing lanes. They've got to start creating creases for running backs more often. And I think they're doing that, at least in the running game. I think Blake Miller has a little work to do on pass protection when he's got a fast guy opposite him. I think maybe the middle guys, as much as they are improved so far as we can see this year, maybe still have some work to do in opening up those passing lanes to get a clean middle of the field, make sure there's not a tipped ball. If you can't move a guy to one side or the other, at least keep him in position where he can't get his arms up and deflect the ball. Let Klubnik work over the middle. Because I'll tell you what, I am impressed with Antonio Williams. I'm impressed with Bo Collins, and I'm glad to be able to say that because I've been a fan of his from day one. And Tyler Brown, maybe the second year in a row that a true freshman, not a springtime enrollee, is coming in and really sort of stealing the show a little bit. And if those three guys keep it up and continue to improve, and we see Adam Randall improve, that's a nice quartet of receivers that you can count on. And then I don't know. Let me know what you think of those guys, and then go ahead and segue into Stellato, who we finally see
Yeah. How about that?
in action.
I like Tyler Brown a lot returning punts. He had the long punt return. He's, maybe he takes that job from Antonio Williams, and maybe takes one thing off Antonio Williams's plate, and that's okay.
Yep.
Right. I mean, he did a lot last year as a freshman. Williams did. Maybe you take something off his plate a little bit and let somebody else have some of that. But Bo looked good. He caught the ball. He did have the little bit of an issue where he got walked down on he almost got walked down on that touchdown.
Right.
He did score. So give him credit to that. You saw Dabo.
Is he related to Leon Lett or Ray McLeod? What?
Dabo had a little bit of a teaching moment. Hey, watch out on Ray. Ray had a great block yesterday in the 49ers game, 70 yards down the field. So let's point that out. But no.
Hopefully he learned his lesson, right?
Yeah. And look, Stellato caught, he caught the
5
ball
balls
when it was thrown to him, right?
Yeah.
And was really, really good. I really impressed by what I saw from Stellato. So, I think, Brandon still caught the ball when it was thrown to him. I still wish they'd throw it to him more often, or find ways to get him the ball, because he is such a good athlete.
Yeah.
Use him and throw him open, which is what this offense is supposed to do. But,
right.
So look, I think the receivers improved a lot from game 1 to game 2. And maybe that's just what we're just going to have to see from this team, improvements week to week. I mean, let's see how they look Saturday night against Florida Atlantic. But I felt like Saturday felt much more, even with the 3 big mistakes, and it could have been a 4th one if on the intentional grounding, that could have been another pick 6 if Cade could have made another mistake there.
Yeah.
I still felt like Saturday I came out with much more positive feelings than I expected. Now, I didn't learn anything because of the opponent, but I feel like if they don't turn the ball over, there's a chance for this team. And I didn't feel like that coming out of the Duke game. I did not. But if they don't turn it over, we saw in the second half what they can be a little bit. So I like the receivers. I like what I saw from them. I like the line. You're right about Miller. He's got to be better a little bit in pass protection. But also the point there is, remember 2019 and 2020? As soon as Trevor's back foot hit the ground, there's people in his face. Yeah. And for all of Travis's long touchdown runs and 7-yard carries, it felt like he was doing everything on his own, where, there wasn't a hole there, but Travis got as much out of it as he could get almost every time. I don't feel like that about this line. Now we'll see as the opponents get better. I think Duke's pretty good. And Elko is as good a defensive coach maybe as Clemson's going to see all year. So we'll see what that game means. But I do feel like the offensive line has improved a lot, just as far as there's holes there. There's not guys totally in Cade's face every time he drops back, those kinds of things. But then we also got to mention Robert Gunn. I mean, every kick
yep,
was where it needed to be. There was one that was slightly off center, but there were none of the shanks. There were none of the little mistakes that he made in the first game. Big improvement for him, right? Did anybody improve more than him from game 1 to game 2? I don't think there did. There was not on this roster.
No, probably not. And I also want to bring up Josh Sapp, who may be able to provide some depth at tight end that maybe we didn't know about. And frankly, maybe in blocking situations, he needs to be on the field more. I mean, you talk about that fumble on the snap to Klubnik, where he was trying to hand it off to Maffa, and neither one of them got the ball. And maybe the Charleston Southern guy was offsides. You and I talked a little bit about that before we recorded. Stool didn't even get a chip on that guy. He tried to double up on somebody and didn't put a hat on a hat. Maybe that's what the scheme calls for, and maybe my complaint is misplaced. But to me, there's just got to be some common sense of put a hat on a hat. I think that was missing last year and maybe even the year before. And this year, we need to see those things shored up. That's another one of those things. And if Sapp is able to understand the assignments better and be a more physical guy, he certainly showed he can catch the ball and be a little bit dynamic as a receiving option, maybe more so than Sage Ennis already. I'd love to see him out there, especially the son of a guy who you and I liked a lot when we were in school.
How about that?
Yeah.
How about that? I was telling Matt, our younger son, I said I went to school with his dad, and he started out as a quarterback and then went to the NFL as a defensive end. How about who's ever done that in the NFL? We're talking about two-way stars, and I mean that was a really cool moment for me to see Sapp catch that ball, and I immediately thought about how excited his dad probably was to see that. But Sapp is athletic. He can run, and he's big. He's a big dude. So yeah, definitely if he can help in the blocking, in the running game and in the passing game as well, you probably will see a lot more of him moving forward. But that was a nice pattern. He ran a good route. He's wide open. And I thought that was a really, really cool moment for that touchdown.
So this week it's FAU coming in, Florida Atlantic, another team with a first-year coach. They fired Willie Taggart. Oh gosh, do you remember a name? The new coach who they hired is escaping me. It's another
Herman.
There you go, Tom Herman. I knew it was somewhat familiar and just couldn't get to it. So thank you for being John Papelbon to my Aaron Nola, right?
Don't bring up those two names. As the Phillies are losing right now. No,
I don't know. I mean, is FAU any more of a measuring stick than Charleston Southern was? I mean, you would think they have to be on some level, but again, not close at all. I think they're a better program now than they were. I think it was 05 or 06. We played them. They came up to the Valley. And they just didn't stand much chance that year. I was working at the Palm Beach Post. Of course, they had beat writer and was trying to talk up FAU's chances, and I just didn't see it happening. But I was kind of quiet because I was living in enemy territory, and that was a blowout. I mean, this should be a blowout because Clemson should be a better program now than it was then as well. What do you look for against a team like FAU? And do you try to hold back something in the playbook still to have something in week 4 that Florida State hasn't seen yet? I'm more of a, hey, empty the playbook, let's run reps and make Florida State see everything on tape and have to respect every option rather than try to debut something that the team hasn't done yet, especially as mistake prone as this team is.
Yeah, I don't do anything new until we fix what's being done right now, right? They're somewhere there between Duke and Charleston Southern is where they are. I mean, like you said, new coaching staff, they weren't very good.
Really narrowing it down there, right?
Well, yes, but they're not better than Duke, and they're not as bad as Charleston Southern, and so they're probably closer. I'd say they're closer to Duke because they're an FBS program. They've got 85 scholarships, just like Clemson. All that stuff's true, but this should not be a game. I want to see no turnovers from the quarterback. That's. If somebody else fumbles, okay. I mean, if you get hit, you get hit. Like the Moffa hit in the first game. If you get hit, you get hit. Guy makes a play, I can live with that. I don't want to live with it, but I can. I don't want to see the mental mistakes from the quarterback. The plays that don't need to be made, that shouldn't need to be made, that we've never seen. That pick six is as bad of a decision as you're going to see a college quarterback make this year. It really is. There's going to be some that are worse, but that one's in the mix.
Are there?
For sure.
There?
Maybe. We'll see. But don't make those kinds of mistakes. Now, you also don't want him going out there playing scared. You don't want him going out there thinking, oh my God, I can't make a mistake here. What am I going to do? No, you don't want that. But there has to be a balance there of, look, this young man is talented. He's got he's got everything you want. He doesn't have the huge arm, but his arm is big enough.
Yeah.
He's got the playmaking skills. He's an athlete. He's, like you said it earlier, seems like the guys like playing for him. All of that kind of stuff is true. But you can't have those mistakes. You just absolutely can't have them. And I want to see that. I want to see a clean game from him is what I want to see. Now, the other stuff, you don't want the defense to fall off. You don't want busts, all that. That's true too. But my focus Saturday night, I'm planning there, is I want to see him play a clean game. He's got 4 turnovers in 2 games. You can't live like that. And I know that, what was it, Deshaun's sophomore year, he had a bunch of turnovers early. Remember that?
Right. Even into the middle of the year, yeah.
Right. He also was Deshaun Watson, and he had superstars around him. Yeah. And all those games, they won a lot of close games that shouldn't have been that close because of turnovers. I want to see him play a clean game. That's going to be my focus Saturday night.
Yeah, and they were turnovers you could overcome because they typically were down the field on deep throws or mid-range throws. You know, it wasn't fumbling the ball in your own backfield, failing to contain the snap, failing to execute a handoff. Like these are things that players on this level should have had sorted out by their junior year in high school for the most part. And when they don't, it's noticeable, right? Like, you know, how many guys across the nation have we seen who just never develop past this stage, and that becomes the book on them. You know, hey, yeah, they're going to light it up, but you're going to see some major mistake that can cost the team the game. And look, plenty of guys do overcome this with time. You know, Watson's junior year, you know, we saw a better job from him in that regard. He tightened it up. So look, big fan of Cade Klubnik. Can't wait to see this guy playing better, hoping it's much sooner rather than later. And again, yeah, I think you're right. I think FAU, the focus has to be Clemson can't be Clemson. You know, Clemson needs to be in position to take advantage of its talent edge. FAU's in South Florida, but they are not high on the pecking order for teams recruiting South Florida. You've got Miami ahead of them. You got FAU ahead of them. Florida and Florida State both in there. Clemson definitely goes down there and recruits. Stellato, I believe, is a South Florida guy. You know, and there was national attention on a lot of these players who have left South Florida to go elsewhere. By the time you get to the guys who are staying home and on the, you know, no better than third option to stay home with, you're just not talking about playoff caliber talent that makes up the bulk of their roster, so to speak. They're going to be motivated. They know the game. You can't sleep on them. And I think FAU could potentially be close to what you've known Duke to be all these years. I don't think they're close to this year's Duke team or last year's Duke team. So the mistakes will not be excusable in my eyes. Focus on a clean sheet, as they say about soccer goalkeepers, right? Do the right thing all the time. Let the big plays come to you. Don't try to force them. And that goes for the defense as well as the offense. Be in position to make tackles. There were some broken tackles against Duke. Not an alarming number, but some. I think the tackling is better this year than it was last year in general. I think it was a problem numerous times for Clemson last year. Be in position, own your space, win your assignment, and be ready when, hey, this is the big play. Applies to the defense as much as it does the offense. So also, we will close with news of the noon kick against Florida State. Clemson did not do its part to earn a primetime spot, but a friend of mine texted me today that that's supposed to be a noon kick. Is that official from what you've seen, Daniel?
I have not heard that. So you're breaking some news here on me for sure.
Well,
noon
we'll
kickoff
see.
for Florida State. Is that I would imagine it's going to be an ABC game then. You know, and try to match up with the Fox game. Fox has the big game at noon each week. I would imagine that'll be a network, like a nationwide game, not a regional game.
Right.
So that's interesting. I was thinking it was probably going to be a 3:30 kick. So that's really, really interesting that's going to be a noon one.
They may not want to put it up against Florida, Tennessee if that's going to be a 3:30 SEC game.
Well, that's
Again,
this week. Florida, Tennessee is
that's
this
right.
week.
That's right. It is a week early this year. So I remember
that's interesting. Noon
yeah.
kick.
So we'll see if it comes out as the official news, but that's what I've heard so far.
Like the old days, 1 o'clock kickoff in the Valley.
Yeah.
That's what I grew up on every Saturday.
Oh yeah. I remember my freshman year, we had some noons and maybe even 11 that freshman year. Shall we say the hops breakfast was in order for
yes, it was.
some of those games. Well, once that kickoff time is official, we will have it atop our homepage, clemsonkickoff.com. We will get that updated as soon as we know through the official channels. You can also see our archive of episodes there. You can also see them at youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. We got a playlist with everything on it there. Find us on Twitter as news breaks at Clemson Kickoff. The domain name is still twitter.com. I'm not going to start calling it X just yet. I'm clinging to the old-fashioned name. We're also on Threads. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. And until our next episode, I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tigers.